Hi everyone, and welcome to this short explainer video on how to use the Pressure Pain Detection Threshold app available through the Pain and Quality of Life Integrative Research Labs website, which I've got here on the screen. You can see the URL is Pearl Research, that's Pearl with an I.com. When you navigate to the page, you're first going to be shown the home page. Across the top you can see the links, and we want to click on Clinician Resources. In that, you can see a number of resources here that are all available for free to those of you who are interested, and we're going to record a number of explainer apps or videos for these different resources. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Pressure Pain Detection Threshold app for smartphones link, and that's going to take us right down to a link further on down the page. Here, if you happen to be navigating to this from an Android-based smartphone, you can tap directly on the Download Here link or even on the title, and both will download a small file to your smartphone called an APK file. You can follow the prompts on your phone to install that, and one of the things you're going to have to do is allow installations from an external or third-party source. In newer versions of Android, you can indicate that you just want to do that for this particular installation, not for every installation, because if you leave that feature on, just be aware that it leaves your phone vulnerable to malicious software. I'm going to run through this assuming you do not have an Android-based smartphone. Unfortunately, I don't have this available yet for iOS-based devices. However, there is a workaround, and the workaround is to use an Android emulator called BlueStacks, which will run in Windows. This is the BlueStacks website here. You can see it's BlueStacks.com, or you can just Google BlueStacks and it'll take you right here. You'll see on this front page there's a big green button here that says Download BlueStacks. Now I'm not going to do that because I've already got it installed on my system. But once you click that, you'll be taken to a page to download a small exe file. You can install that on your Windows machine, and then you can run an Android emulator. Now when you open BlueStacks, you're going to be presented first of all with what looks like an app store, and indeed it is. This is basically the Google Play Android app store, but shown in the BlueStacks environment on a Windows 10 machine, which is what I'm running this on right now. Across the top, you'll see some different links here, and one of them is for My Apps. If you tap on that or click on it, you're going to be taken to a page that will show you the apps that you've installed, as well as some kind of an ad in the back, I guess. Down the bottom right here, you're going to see a couple of options, and one of those is Install APK. Now, if you click on that, a standard Explorer window will pop up. You can navigate to where you downloaded the APK, and you can install it directly into this environment. So basically, you have an Android app installed on your Windows machine. I've already done that. You'll see here there's an icon. It says PPDT1, which is the name of it. I didn't take any time to create a nice icon or even change the name, the default name of the app. So this is what you get. If you open that though, you can see how the system works. So you're going to be presented first of all with this little splash screen, a goofy little video there with the link to the lab's website. Another splash page with a couple of other links, many of which don't work anymore. Then you'll be brought to the actual home page of the app. Here you're going to see two buttons. One of them is grayed out, which is watch the tutorial video. That's actually what I'm recording right now. So eventually that button may become live, although we're actually redoing this entire app. So for the time being, pretty well what you get is what you're going to get. This button, Conduct the Test, is live though. You can tap on that. You're going to be taken to the main page where you're going to be entering the data for your patient's pressure pain detection threshold. You're going to see a couple of options here, enter scores for neck and enter scores for tibialis anterior. This is specifically for people with neck pain using the normative database that we've created over several years. But you'll notice that those two buttons are currently not live. You can't tap on them. Nothing's going to happen. And that's because there are two mandatory pieces you need to first enter before you can start to enter these fields. The first here is the sex of the patient you're working with. This is critical to understanding and interpreting the pain threshold score. So let's choose this as a female patient for now. And you need to indicate what units you like to work in. Now, depending on the device you have, they may output the values in different units. I use a Wagner FDX25 most commonly, and it gives me units of pounds, kilograms, newtons, or ounces. Those of you who use, for example, a somatic device will also get kilopascals. Now, I happen to have grown up in a world of pounds. That's just the way I think, so I'm just going to choose pounds, although you could choose any unit you want. Once I've done that, you'll now see that these two buttons for entering scores actually become live. There is a third button here. You can indicate the worst side if you want, whether the person complains more of pain on the right side, left side, or both sides equally. This actually doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the app will determine which is the worst side, so for now I'll just choose both equal. You'll see there's a patient name field here. It's highlighted. You don't need to enter that. That's completely optional. In fact, right now it doesn't really do anything. Now, then we can now go into the Enter Scores for Neck button. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to watch the video that shows you how to actually perform the clinical test of pressure pain detection threshold. Here we'll assume that you've done it. You're doing it with the patient in front of you. I'm just going to enter some example values here. So let's say I do a value, I get 7.58 pounds before the patient says, yep, that's painful. I can tab across or click across over to the right side, and on the right side, let's imagine I get 8.56 pounds, just making those up right now. I can go down now. You'll remember from the video showing the test that you should always do at least 2 tests. One is never going to be good enough, so let's imagine we do another test and I'll get 8.01 pounds, and I tab over to the right side. Now, what happens here, you'll see something green just popped up, and that says 2 tests are enough on the left side. What the app has done is it's automatically determined the difference between the first and second test, and it's compared that against what we know about the standard error of measurement of these tests. In this case, the difference between the first and second test was not greater than the standard error. In other words, it says you're within the right range. You don't need to do a third test. The first 2 are similar enough. But let's come up with a different example. Let's imagine on the right side we get 10.67 pounds. When I tab off of that, it's going to say, well, that difference is bigger than what we know of the standard error, so you should do another test on the right side. So let's go over to the right side, and let's say we do 9.85 pounds. Okay, so now they're all sort of within a couple of pounds. Then I can submit the scores, and here you'll see that the app has calculated the mean for me. Okay, now let's imagine I go down to tibialis anterior, and we do the same thing. So let's say we start on the left side, and I enter, and I get 12.76 pounds. Maybe I do the right side, maybe I don't, but let's just put a number here. It's going to want me to put something in, so I'll just put 10.76 pounds. I go back to the next one, and say the next one on the left side, I do again, and I get 18.98 pounds. Now we know already this is going to be on the standard error, so it's going to ask me to do a third test on the left side. We'll say the right side, let's just make it up, and we'll say it's 11 pounds, so they're within very close range. On the left side, let's say I do my third test, and I get 19.02 pounds. Now, what you see here is that this first test is quite a bit different than the next 2. It's almost 6 pounds or over 6 pounds different than the next 2. This isn't uncommon. The first time you do the test, there's a bit of a calibration period. The patient isn't quite sure, is that pressure, is that pain? Usually the second, third time, things are a little bit more consistent. So what these little check marks here are next to the first test fields are basically saying, do you want to include this first test within the calculation of the mean, or do you want to get rid of it? In this case, I'm going to get rid of it, because I think if I don't, it's going to artificially pull the mean down. I really don't think that this 12.76 is actually true compared to the next 2, which were almost identical to each other. So I'm going to uncheck that, say we'll just call that a calibration test to get rid of it. And I'm going to submit those scores. Once again, it's estimated the mean for me. So this already is fairly useful. It helps me determine whether I need to do 2 or 3 tests. But then we have this interpretation button, and if we go into that, it actually helps us understand what these values mean. Now there's a lot of behind the scenes things happening here in this app. One of them is that it's comparing your patient's scores to a normative database of now about 400 people. And so what it does, first of all, is it tells you that the most sensitive side of the neck is the left side. That's the one that has the lower side, and you can see where it got that down here. Most sensitive side, left, 7.79 pounds. Most sensitive side of tibialis anterior is the right side at 10.88 pounds. It again shows you your means for your most sensitive and least sensitive sides. And what it does here is compares those. It says the difference between upper fibers of trapezius, that's UFT sides, is 24%, or likely a significant difference. Based on what we know about the clinically important difference of these things, anything that's more than about 20% different between the 2 sides, we're going to say that that's probably significantly different. In other words, you could say the left side is probably clinically significantly more sensitive than the right side. Don't mistake this for statistical significance, but obviously we can't do that with just 2 tests. Going further down then is the interpretation as far as quartiles. Now, as I said, this is taken from a large normative database, so we're able to compare this patient's scores against what we know of people with neck pain. Here we can see that the left upper traps is in the 3rd quartile. In other words, in the 50 to 75th percentile of all of the people in our large normative database. In this case, all the females actually in our large normative database. The right side is actually in the 4th quartile, or the upper, the highest quartile, that 75 to 100th percentile. In other words, neither one of these are suggesting the person is particularly sensitive at the neck. Same thing can be said for the tibialis anterior, where the right is in the 3rd quartile and the left is in the 4th quartile. So they're all sort of in the upper 50%, all of the tests of people that we have also tested with neck pain. So in this case, the person really isn't all that sensitive. Now, if this said it was in the 1st quartile, for example, that's in that lowest sort of the 0 to 25th percentile of our normative database. That would suggest the person is sensitive in those areas. And you may decide that if they're both sensitive around the upper fibers of traps and the tibialis anterior, that might suggest widespread mechanical hypersensitivity. And then finally, going off a paper we published a few years ago on change scores, it tells you that if you wanted to see clinically significant change on the most sensitive side, which again in this case was the left, pain threshold should increase 2.55 pounds, which is what we found to be the most useful clinically important difference, to 10.34 pounds from 7.79. So you can record all this information into your patient's chart, and hopefully that helps you interpret some of these pain threshold values. All for now.